what were your first memories of dancing? Was this something that you always wanted to do?
Well, it's interesting because I'm always in awe of people that come from such different backgrounds that end up in the arts, because it's not something that, unless you have a certain background or a certain introduction to it, it's not something that people will initially choose to live, with.
Yes.
But in my case, it wasn't vocational per se. I come from dancer parents, and I lived my life in the theatre. I know only theatre. That's all I know. And and so it kind of was inevitable in a way. Maybe not. I guess, I don't know if I wanted to be a dancer at the time. I mean, for a long, long time, I didn't want to be a dancer. I was sure that I just didn't want to be a dancer. And so I tried many, many other things. But I did know that I didn't want to work in an office either. And I didn't see myself in a very, in a job that didn't feel creative to me, because I think many jobs are extremely creative, but of course I hadn't, even in, I think in banking, some jobs are extremely creative, but of course not for what I had been bottle fed. I had been bottle fed theatre, and the smell of wood and the smell of damp or whatever the theatre smells bring you. And for me to go into another job wasn't a visible idea. So I knew I would stay within the arts. I just needed to find what exactly. And since my parents were both contemporary dancers, but classically trained, it all started because my parents, so my dad ran a company. He was the director of a company, and my mom ran the school. And my mom was still dancing in the company, but running the school. And so I was about 10 when we moved to the Canaries, and that happened. And it was it's always a fragile age when you are 12, 13, 14. And I think, my brother is 2 years older than me. And I think she wisely thought, I'm not going to let them, I'm going to keep an eye on them. And so she made us, at least be, if not in the premises, in the school premises, take class, it will be good for you, no matter what. And I did everything to skip that, like everything. I will find piano lessons or, sculpture lessons or painting lessons. And I would always put them at the time that classes started. And she was absolutely fine. My parents were super, super cool with that. They were like, yeah, great. As long as I was doing something, they were really, really good with that. They just didn't want me just hanging around for hours. But of course, I would watch all the shows. We would be part of their daily life. Was all about art and creation and dance. And so it's impossible that, that nothing went in. Of course, everything went in. Everything went in. So when I decided to follow the path of being a dancer, there was so much stored in my head that within a year, I, of course, became from a beginner to quite quickly quite a good dancer. But I can't say that it was all me, because of course my parents did most of the work, and everybody asked me, isn't it hard to be taught by your parents? Yes, in some ways, because you don't have those boundaries that you have with your teacher, but you have a certain understanding that is there already. So I found it a bonus. My brother, on the other hand, I say, but he was fired all the time. I mean, he's not fired. He was when the teacher sacks you from the class. So he would be constantly out of class because they couldn't handle he was rebellious, against. And so my mom would go to your dad's class. I can't have you in my class. And so my dad, 2 days later, go to your mother's house. I can't handle you in my class. But funnily enough, it's interesting because my brother was a principal with Boston Ballet, and now he's a choreographer. Yeah. So he very much followed my parents' paths.
Yeah.
And until now, actually, we still now sometimes take my mom and dad's class.
Yeah.
Oh, so wow. We continued throughout all our career, despite our flourishing and achievements. Yeah. We still went back home and took class with them because for us, they were the best teachers.
Yeah, yeah. That's so fascinating that even with the career that you've had, you find that you're always still learning.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. And also just that trust,
yeah.
you have those teachers that you fully trust, and I fully trust all my teachers, but my mom and dad I understand them because,
Of
there's
course,
so much.
flesh and
Yeah,
blood. Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah. And was it always ballet that you were going to do? Did you ever think about going down the contemporary route?
Yes, I hated the classical ballet. I thought it was boring as anything. I thought it was two-dimensional. I thought it was boring. I didn't understand why people would ever follow that path. For me, contemporary was so much more open-minded, so much more creative. But then, of course, I had to be classically trained. Well, I felt, at least my parents, that's their journey. And so I think they felt that, I had to be classically trained to be able to then choose what I
Yeah,
wanted to do.
very rooted in ballet and that classical movement, isn't it? So you need to have that, you need to have the technique in order to be able to do other styles, right?
Absolutely. I mean, at least it's a good base to
Yeah.
start with. Then you can move up. Saying that, as a classical dancer, I couldn't have done what many contemporary dancers do,
Mhm.
because it's such a technique that they have, that I could not ever even mimic them. Um, but at least it means that at the beginning of your journey, you can have a choice. You have more of a scope for choice,
Mhm.
and it certainly adds, more than takes away.
Yeah, yeah. And so when you went into the Royal Ballet, did you find that you had to be able to adapt to many different styles? Because it seems that the ballet world has changed enormously and dancers have to be able to do lots of different things and work with, because I know that Crystal Pite came in and she did a piece, and obviously Christopher Wheeldon.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I joined the Royal Ballet, I had just come from Paris Opera. And both companies are were quite closed vis-a-vis, this is the style and we take only kids from the school, and I didn't
Yes.
come from the school. So
Yeah.
all it had, and so it's very,
Bit like New York City Ballet.
that's right, very
Yeah.
regimented and very clear path, I think. So I didn't come from the Paris Opera School or the Royal Ballet School.
Yeah.
So it meant that, yes, that I had to be a little bit more, how do you say, my senses had to be a little bit more quicker,
Mm.
and more open. But it meant that, but I came from a contemporary background, so my senses were fairly, flexible
Mhm.
when it came to adapting. So I felt I was better prepared for that. So I left Paris Opera and I came to the Royal, and I hadn't really seen, I was more, my background was much more French schooling
Mhm.
than it was English. And
Yeah.
so the English schooling is, for Ashton work and for Macmillan work, is very, very specific. I
Yeah.
didn't really have that. So
Okay.
I had to learn it fairly quickly. And then, of course, when it came to the contemporaries, I was in my element. So and I know in a way, I guess that's why I was picked for new creations all the time, because really I felt that was it. It was my ground. It was for me to create, and I loved it.